Now, it's time to have a look at the papers and guess what's in them. No surprises. Brexit dominating many of the front pages today. Let's take a quick peek at the Financial Times and how the UK is waking up to what's being called the most important issue since the Second World War. The Financial Times says that the Prime Minister is fighting for her political life and her Brexit plan. Over on the Times, they're suggesting that Mrs May is at the mercy of what remains of her cabinet. It says we might not have seen the last of the resignation, so watch this space. Whilst over at City AM, they're picking up on the Prime Minister's use of her cricketing hero, Geoffrey Boycott, as inspiration. The New York Times is highlighting the potential for chaos with the Brexit deal. Underneath its front page photo is a Dutch distribution centre, it says, where there's now widespread uncertainty over imports such as Holland's famous flowers. And one other story for you. The Gulf News has the story that Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor is seeking the death penalty for 5 out of the 11 suspects charged in connection with the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The paper says that Mr Khashoggi was killed in the country's Istanbul consulate on the 2nd of October after a struggle. He was killed by lethal injection. So let's begin, shall we? Cornelia Meyer is back to take us through some of the stories, the vast majority of them obviously on Brexit today. It's being described as a civil war. This on the front page of the Financial Times. May defiant as draft deal threatens Tory civil war. How weak is Theresa May's position as leader?
Well, I think it's weakened, but the question is anybody strong enough? You know, there's the 1922 committee where, as David Eads said, 15%, which is 48 members, need to bring in the letters of no confidence, and then you can trigger it. But the thing is, you then need to make sure it really goes through, because you can only do that once a year. So there will be, once they've done it, you can't do it for another year. So we will see. She's basically staring them down. She says, OK, you want to unseat me? Go ahead, bring it on. But it's very damaging. Now, the leadership contest is one thing. If she stays, if she leaves, that's one thing. But even if she stays, even if she goes to Brussels on the 25th of November, and even if all the governments, the 27 governments say, yes, you can go ahead, she then needs to get it through Parliament. And I just don't see, whichever way I count, how she can get the majority. She's lost 10 DUP people. She's lost the European Research Council, the hard Brexiteers. She has lost quite a few, like Joe Johnson, the brother of Boris Johnson. Quite a few of the pro-Remain people say we want another referendum. I don't think many Labour. She will depend on the kindness of strangers, which would mean Labour, Lib Dems, and Scottish National Party (SNP). I don't see how she can get enough people there to put it through Parliament. So the real issue is whether she stays or goes. Even if she stays, what will happen when it comes to the meaningful vote in Parliament?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, watching the press conference yesterday that she gave, that she was very late for, and we were all sort of wondering what was going on and why there was such a delay. She came out in her initial words. I was convinced she was going to resign. The tone was completely different. And then as she built, it changed. It became more defiant in nature. And that was her parting shot, wasn't it? It's my deal. It's my way or the highway. Very high stakes game of political brinkmanship. Do you think it will work? Did that do enough, do you think, to convince people who were on the margins?
Nobody can see now whether it's working. We need to see what's happening in the 1922 committee, and they won't come out and say, oh, we have the 48 letters, because as soon as they do, the speculation goes on. So we'll need to see how it plays through the weekend. But, you know, she does what else can she do? She stares it down. What will happen if she resigns? We will go into total chaos. And, you know, Merkel was very clear last night when she said, well, there is no room for renegotiation, as we discussed earlier, as was the Foreign Minister Karen Kneißl of Austria holding the presidency, saying, look, we have our own political agenda, we have elections coming up in Europe, we have countries with their own agendas, so what else is she to do?
Let's talk about what's going on in the Times. I mean, again, a very similar picture from the press conference there. A lonely May staggers on. And those comments there from Jacob Rees-Mogg, the leader of the Tory Brexiteer faction, if you will, has submitted, he says, a letter of no confidence. Do we know how close we are to the necessary number to trigger a vote?
No, we don't. They keep it very close to their chest. And if I was them, I would do the same thing. And it was, you know, when you watched when you watched her in Parliament, where she was basically pilloried by everybody for 3 hours. I had some admiration for standing there and sort of, you know, at some stage you could say, well, I've had it, goodbye. She didn't. But he was very, I mean, he was very, I mean, he's a very good orator, and he deployed all his oratorial skills in terms of saying, well, I am now submitting that letter. So she is beleaguered in the party. And as I said, even if she makes it through, how on earth is she going to get the numbers in Parliament? And the thing here is, you know, business needs to go on. Business needs to make plans. And as you mentioned earlier, especially the financial sector, if we lose, which we will, the passporting rights, it's going to be, which means that the ability to clear euro-denominated transactions in the City of London, it's going to be pretty tough.
I mean, it's a fascinating time in politics, isn't it? And an extraordinary period of time when you realise sort of what's going on. And you know, she sort of rounds her press conference with a cricket quote and a reference to Geoffrey Boycott, her cricketing idol, and then sachets off screen. I mean, for international viewers watching this must be a parody of Britain.
Absolutely. And you know, international viewers, and you know, Geoffrey Boycott, it's an interesting choice for many reasons, you know, for his personal life and also for not being maybe the most inspired or inspiring cricketer. But it must be a parody. But you know, that was not meant for the international viewers. I think that was meant for her Tory backbenchers, who all, you know, what do you do on a nice Sunday summer afternoon? You go and watch cricket. Drink
Pimm's and watch cricket. Yes, yeah, certainly, you know, but it is curious. I wonder whether there was a picture there also on City AM of her with her head in her hands and laughing. And I wonder whether or not the way in which she conducted herself during that press conference, that staggering on and that sort of humanity, whether or not that would have done the trick, whether that would have appealed to people and thought she is staying the course. This was her message. She's going to carry on, regardless, it seems.
It is her message, and as I said, she has no other choice. I wonder whether it's not a little bit too late, because, you know, she had similar messages. Remember the Chequers agreement, where she basically said, you resign, you take a cab home, your ministerial, or you're against it, your ministerial limo is gone. And then, you know, it all unravels. So she every now and then comes out with some very strong statements, which then sort of unravel to a little bit. But, you know, all the more power for her. She had no choice, so she might as well do it fighting.
Let's talk about how this is being reviewed, certainly in the international press. And we've got the New York Times here today. And interesting, I was talking about this yesterday, a selection of a new pope is traditionally announced by white smoke. Instead, we get a volley of tweets. We had the resignation of Dominic Raab announced on Twitter before anything else. This is a sort of a very different type of politics and exercise in brinkmanship these days. One wonders whether the politicians will put country and national interest, as she kept mentioning, in the national interest, before personal and party interests. Well,
that would be important. That would be very important. And you know, I've been arguing that for the last, 15 months. And we haven't got there yet. But I think that the other thing in the New York Times is this article, Where's the Bouquet?, which is about this distribution center in Holland, which actually distributes 1/3 of all cut flowers in the world. And 1 billion of those third cut flowers come to here and come to the UK. And what will they do? You know, cut flowers, you can't have them sitting for ages somewhere in Kent on a motorway or in Calais on a motorway. So that's a real issue, and it's a real issue for other countries. Ireland didn't vote for the deal. We are their biggest trading partner. It's tough on them. And as Letta, the former Prime Minister of Italy, came out yesterday, he said, look, a bad Brexit is going to be very bad for Italy, because Italy has its own demons with its budget woes. So the last thing it needs is yet another bad thing hitting the EU.
And one other story, of course, which didn't get a huge amount of prominence yesterday because of the Brexit chaos, but certainly picked up on Gulf News. This is the 5 that are now facing the death penalty for the Khashoggi murder. I mean, quite an extraordinary measure, and the UAE seems to welcome it.
Well, the UAE seems to welcome it. The kingdom, Saudi, seems to welcome it. I mean, you know, whenever we look at this was a very tragic incident. I don't know what happened. I'm sure our security services know what happened. But one thing we should not forget is how important the stability of Saudi Arabia is to the West, because GCC is an island of stability in a sea of unrest.
Okay, Cornelia, nicely said. Thank you very much. Stay with